What is going on, YouTube universe? My name is Trent and welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, the channel where we discuss everything Australian rules football. And it is that time of the week, ladies and gentlemen. Another installment of the Round Recap podcast is upon you. We are about to dive on in and unpack all the action from round 22, the third to last round of the home and away season for 2024. It has come and gone so incredibly quick. I feel only yesterday we were watching the grand final over the COVID years. It honestly doesn't feel like it's been 4 years since Richmond won that 2020 flag. As a Richmond supporter, I cling to those moments, especially given the year we have had this year. But speaking of the year Richmond have had this year, I think that translates and segues perfectly into what today's word of the day is going to be, because I definitely feel the word of the day for this particular installment of the Round Recap podcast is heartache, or even heartbreak, if you will, because at least one team in every game experienced heartbreak in some way, shape, or form. This was an incredible round of football when it came to the outcomes of the games and how some of the games really were turned on their fucking head. We had some outcomes that nobody would have seen coming. It was such a whirlwind of emotion, especially if you were taking in the entire weekend as a neutral like I do every weekend. It was insane. And to think that after this round, we have 2 rounds to go, and there are still a handful of teams vying for both the top 4 and top 8 spot. I honestly cannot remember the last time we've had a season where the race to the finish line is this incredibly close. I mean, we still have the leader, Sydney Swans, in first place by only 1 win. Anything can happen in the next 2 weeks, and they can fall off that perch. It's going to be an interesting watch. And for those of us that aren't going to be experiencing finals by watching our own teams playing, I think it's about time we start assessing who we think we're going to be getting on board with. And I've got a couple of teams that I've kind of been riding the coattails of, for lack of better words, really, given the fact that I've got some close friends that have teams that are in contention. I don't know who my household is going to be particularly rooting for come finals time, but there's definitely some teams that I would rather see win more than others, and we'll kind of shift into that conversation point as time rolls on. But round 22, as I said, holy shit, a roller coaster of emotion, and it kicked off at the SCG with Sydney hosting Collingwood. Now, when I did my tipping video, I said that I didn't think Sydney would fumble this, especially given the week prior Port Adelaide gave them an absolute belting to the tune of 112 points. I tipped them in an incredibly close contest, and they did win in an incredibly close contest. I did not think, however, they were going to win by 3 points in a game that by 3/4 time, I honestly felt the door was closing very quickly on them. This was a game that Collingwood came out firing in the first and led by a couple of goals. The halftime deficit was only a handful of points. We then saw Collingwood take a commanding lead heading into the third term. I think they were about 3, close enough to 4 goals clear. And at that point in time, with the momentum that they had wrestled back within that third quarter, I really felt Collingwood had everything under control. They seemed cool, calm, and collected. And we have seen Collingwood in those scenarios revert into those final quarter moments where they become incredibly defensively sound. They're happy to chip the ball around and maintain possession. And I really thought it was just going to be a quarter of keepings off. And then enter Isaac Heaney and Chad Warner, especially Isaac Heaney, who had one of the single most impressive fourth quarter performances that I have seen from any player this year. There has been 3 definitive moments throughout the entire season where one player stood tall enough in the final quarter to get their team over the line. We saw it happen with Nick Dacos earlier in the year when Collingwood took on North Melbourne. Will Powell was subbed out of the game. Nick Dacos got absolutely off the chain in the final quarter and helped Collingwood get over the line. With Sydney here, Isaac Heaney played that exact role, and later on in this exact same round, Jason Horne-Francis does the same for Port Adelaide. It is incredible to think that a single player can possess enough X factor about them to swing the chain of emotion and momentum so incredibly quick in a game of football. Isaac Heaney was everywhere in the last quarter. He was down defensive 50, taking defensive marks and moving the ball out to get some rebound work going. He was plucking marks in the forward 50 and kicking goals, and especially in the dying moments when Sydney just needed somebody to really just slow the play down and take control. It was almost like he was kicking the ball to himself, the bastard. He was fucking everywhere, and it really cements the conversation point around how far Isaac Heaney truly has come this season as a player. This has been his breakout year, and it is incredibly frustrating, I feel, not just for neutral fans, but obviously for Sydney fans as well, given the fact that they've been calling for Heaney to have midfield time for so long. He finally gets it given to him, and have a look at the season he has put together. It is just a shame. It's truly a fucking shame that he is going to miss a possible Brownlow medal given the suspension he copped this year for a very innocuous knock and act. I still feel by the end of the year, come all the time, the votes are all calculated, he is still going to be very much within the top 4, top 5 bracket, especially if my MVP voting system that I've been doing through this podcast series has anything to go by. He has been one of this year's best, and he really stood tall in this game. It was just really the embodiment of a player putting their team on their back and carrying them to the finish line. It was as comprehensive a single performance as you will see all year. And as I said, there's only been 3 moments like this collectively, and 2 of them happened this weekend. So that just goes to show how influential not only players can be, but how still close this competition is at the top end of the tally. It is incredible. No injuries to report out of this game. The one thing that really got me though was 47 seconds left on the clock. Billy Frampton gets subbed off and Joe Richards comes on the ground. Now, Joe Richards, Billy Frampton play 2 completely different roles. Billy Frampton we've come more so to expect playing a defensive role, but he has been sent forward sometimes to negate defenders. He can also, present the ability to mark the ball and kick goals as well. I wouldn't really refer to him as a utilitarian in his positioning, but 47 seconds left on the clock. The game could still have been won, don't get me wrong, within that dying minute, but surely somebody like Joe Richards, who prides himself on attacking the ball, a great burst of speed against somebody like Billy Frampton, who is a tall body, lumbers around quite a bit, wouldn't you be getting somebody like Joe Richards on just a little bit quicker to maybe shift momentum? I don't know. That's just me. I think it was an absolutely idiotic call to wait that late into the game to make that substitution call. And in saying that as well, speaking of idiotic, Mason Cox has the ability to win the game off his own boot potentially in that last 40 seconds of the game. No ruckman announced for a ball up from out of bounds. Collingwood ruckman only. Mason Cox can simply just pluck it out of the ruck, have a shot on goal. No, let's double hand fist it down and fucking just hit it straight to a Sydney player. I do not understand the mindset of this man. And I could tirade about Mason Cox for way too fucking long, so we are going to move on. 37,800 at the SCG. Decent turnout given where these 2 teams are at. But another player I really want to highlight here was Luke Parker. He kicked a couple of goals, and I really feel that a player that has seniority in that team, you know what I'm saying? I'm fumbling my words here. When taking the time to break down individual performances, I also want to highlight the individual effort of Luke Parker. This is a player who, for the largest part of this year, found himself on the out playing at VFL level. He has worn the sub vest a lot. There is speculation that he could be potentially seeking a trade come the end of the year, being linked to teams like North Melbourne, who historically over recent years are pretty much tied to anybody that wants to make a move. Let's be real. But Luke Parker had 14 possessions, 85% efficiency. He kicked a couple of goals, but I felt his presence within the forward 50 of Sydney just presented something that Sydney have been lacking this year, and it just adds that extra body that can hit the scoreboard, can set up his teammates, that feeds the ball out well, that can lay tackles, that pressure forward, especially in the absence of players like Tom Papley. He's playing a very critical role, and I can only hope he's going to keep his role in this team moving forward. However, it is time, for the first time in this video, to lock in my best on ground for this particular game and adding votes to the overall leaderboard for the Hip and Shoulder MVP award for the 2024 season. If you are catching this podcast for the first time, it is a pretty simple concept. 3 vote, 2 vote, 1 vote. Just like the Brownlow medal at the end of the season, whoever tallies the most votes effectively gets named the inaugural Hip and Shoulder MVP winner. Something that no player in the AFL will ever give any fucks about, but I'm going to do it because I enjoy it, and I know you guys at home enjoy it because you've been telling me in the comments. So hey, we keep the ball rolling. This game, because it fell so close to the wire, you could have really gambled a number of players here, but I feel there were some players that maybe their names have been popping up a lot this year that didn't really have as much impact, and I am speaking of Nick Daicos. As much as people will probably say Nick Daicos was deserving of a vote in this game, I mean, 25 disposals of 52%, his effectiveness over the course of the year has been a roller coaster in its own right. He had 9 clearances, didn't take a mark for the game. Most of his disposals were, or almost 50% of his disposals were handballs. 13 were contested, so you can see where those handballs were coming from. But he just didn't have as much impact on the field as I would have loved to have seen him have. Josh Daicos, in a similar happenstance, 26 disposals at 76%, but he only had 2 clearances for the game played. He had 7 contested possessions, did have 6 marks, laid 3 tackles, but again, not that deadly outside ball user that we have come to love and appreciate from the Daicos of the Josh variety. However, shifting attention to players who I think did stand tall, and it is hard to go past this man for the 1 vote because I feel as much as influence played a role, this guy was probably best on ground for Collingwood by a long margin, and I'm throwing it to Darcy Cameron, the ruckman. 19 disposals, 78% disposal efficiency, 15 contested of his 19, 213 metres gained, 25 hitouts, 7 clearances of his own, 7 marks, kicked a goal, 7 score involvements, and laid himself a cheeky tackle as well. I really rate the ruckmen this year that have the ability to win their own ball. Players like Darcy Cameron, Toby Nankervis, Tristan Cherry, Rowan Marshall, I feel those players are now starting to overshadow Max Gawn, and Max Gawn will go down in history as one of the best ruckmen to play the game, don't get me wrong, but they're really starting to reshape the mold of what it is to be a ruckman, and I really love that about Darcy Cameron and how he has gone about his year. I personally feel a nomination for All-Australian should have been on the cards for him, but we'll get to that later because I will be dropping my All-Australian team selection over the next week or so, so eyes peeled for that. The 2 vote for this game goes to Chad Warner. I thought he was absolutely sensational in this game. 33 disposals at 75% disposal efficiency. 13 of those were contested for 490 metres gained. 8 clearances, 2 marks, 2 goals, 8 score involvements, and 3 tackles. But it was this man, Isaac Heaney, as I said, put the team on his back and carried them hard. 32 disposals. Only ran at 53% disposal efficiency, but I feel what let him down early was the fact that he butchered a lot of the ball earlier in the game, and then when the game was to be won, he just flipped that fucking switch. He was impressive. 15 contested, 480 metres gained, 7 clearances, 6 marks, 1 goal, 8 score involvements, and 3 tackles. We shift heartache from Collingwood at the SCG to Brisbane at the Gabba, in a game that I felt was very much a must-win game for both teams, but more so for Brisbane to solidify a top 4 finish. Now, they are every chance to miss that top 4, and I feel they really need to set themselves up for a first or second place finish here if they want to guarantee themselves a walk into the grand final. And I say that because you finish first or second, you get a home final. You then move on from that home final to another home final if you were successful. You then play that home final and then walk into the grand final. And I feel if Brisbane can go into this final series, back-to-back finals at the Gabba, one hand on the premiership trophy already. That's just my personal take. This also was a game that I very much felt at quarter time was done and dusted, considering Brisbane come out and kick 4-7 and the GWS Giants only come out and kick one behind. I thought, holy shit, we're going to get an absolute whitewash today, and GWS is going to dish up a terrible fucking performance. But to my surprise, it was only a few points away of Brisbane come half-time. By three-quarter time, it was only 4 points the difference. And there were some points during the final term that I really felt Brisbane had control, even though they only were marginally in front. And then GWS just put the foot down. And you can only blame inaccuracy for this game when it comes to Brisbane, because you go out there and you kick yourself 16 behinds. You're always going to force yourself into a position where a game can be lost because inaccuracy is going to creep up and bite you on the arse, and that is exactly what happened in this particular game. No injuries to report. Substitutions were only tactical, with Jackson Pryor replacing Henry Smith in the fourth quarter and Connor Stone replacing Harvey Thomas at three-quarter time. 31,000 at the Gabba is a decent turnout as well, given where both these teams are at, and given historically GWS with their supporter base haven't really shown much interest in wanting to turn up for interstate games. Let's not get started, because that's going to get me on a bit of a tangent back when we played them at the MCG and we got absolutely roped by every single commentary team for having such a poor turnout. This game was very interesting, given the fact that the standout for Brisbane was Will Ashcroft, from very little exposure to AFL level this year. And it reminds us that while we still have players like Harry Sheezel and Nick Dacos running around, Will Ashcroft is still very much in the conversation as a generational talent. And while he's dominating out here in the AFL in this particular game, his younger brother's out there in the VFL taking the absolute fucking piss. And thinking these two guys are going to be running side by side together at Brisbane within that midfield would have to excite Brisbane fans, especially with the numbers these kids are producing. Outside of that, I could probably throw a blanket over 10 different players who we could have picked for votes, and of those 10, they are names that you have come to expect. Your Neils, your Zorkos, your Dunkleys, your Berries, for Brisbane that is. For GWS, your Whitfield, your Callahans, your Himmelbergs, your Peatlings, your Josh Kellys. It's a bit of a shame that when games are to be won and to be, to really be harnessed, that it's always the same players standing tall. And that's why I really loved individual performances in this game, like Will Ashcroft, like Shadow Brain for Brisbane. He actually played a really good game as well. For Connor Iden, who sometimes doesn't get as much recognition as he should. Callahan, as I mentioned, doesn't get as much recognition as he should. So when you see names like that popping up, it's really telling of the talent that is coming through, and it's great to see those opportunities be grabbed with both hands and ran with. But again, with the votes, it's pretty stock standard with the players that did get selected. For those that missed out, probably a little bit stiff, but down again on impact overall. Lachie Whitfield had 25 disposals at 84%. Don't get me wrong. Incredible game by him with effectiveness of the ball. But when you compare his numbers this year to this game, they just don't stack up. I mean, 2 marks for the entire game, 2 score involvements and a tackle. That's like a quarter time's worth of work for him in any other game this year. Just a little bit weird to see him down on output. The same with Callahan. Callahan only had 2 score involvements. We're used to seeing him get more up and about. No score involvements for Iden when he's been, putting his hand up every now and again. It's really weird just to see some of these numbers down. but yet GWS won. So they found a way. They found a way to still dig deep with some of their players not performing at the level that we have expected them to be at. And that could probably be also the reason why we are looking at Brisbane losing this game. Not just inaccuracy, but some players just not living up to the moniker that they have set for themselves this year. Especially when you have a look at the behinds that were kicked and the culprits at hand. Cam Rayner doesn't score a goal, he only scores 2 behinds. Kai Lohman doesn't score a goal, he only scores 2 behinds. Zorko, Wilmot, they both kick 1 behind. Jasper Fletcher only kicks a behind. Dunkley only kicks a behind. Charlie Cameron only kicked 1 goal, 1. Neil, I was going to say Neil Danaher there for a second then. Joe Danaher only kicked 2 goals, 1. Will Ashcroft only kicked a behind. Kellar Chi kicked 2 goals, 1. Some culprits there that we are used to just hitting the scoreboard very emphatically missing opportunity. It was just, I think, a very disappointing but blip on the radar kind of loss for Brisbane. I think probably a loss Brisbane could have done with this late in the season. You'd rather cop one now than heading into finals, right? But the 3-2-1 for me fell the way as follows. I did throw the 1 vote to Jesse Hogan. I thought up forward he caused a lot of problems for Brisbane, and walking out with a handful of goals, getting himself involved in the contest, I thought he played some big important moments. 16 disposals at 75%, 10 contested for 259 metres gained. He had 1 clearance, 6 marks, 3 goals straight with 5 score involvements and the 1 tackle on the day. And in the end, when you look at the scoreboard, a couple of goals either side, you could almost argue that his influence on the game could have been match winning, really. So 1 vote I think is warranted. The 2 vote to me does go to Will Ashcroft. 29 disposals at 75% disposal efficiency. 9 of those were contested for 335 metres gained. 5 clearances, 9 marks, only the 1 behind as I mentioned, but he had 10 score involvements and he had the 1 tackle on the day. And best on ground for me, I felt again, playing in the big time moments, has really turned his form around as well, was Tom Green. 28 disposals at 82% disposal efficiency. 8 of those were contested for 475 metres gained. 5 clearances, 5 marks, 2 score involvements and 3 tackles. Now, you could probably argue a case for Will Ashcroft and the fact that he had 10 score involvements versus 2 for the best on here. But I just felt in the scheme of how the game was played, and when GWS started getting on top of the game and started running away with it, Tom Green was more influential in that particular moment, which gets him the 3 vote over Will Ashcroft. Down at Blundstone Arena, heartache shifts from the Gabba and Brisbane. We then take that heartache from the Gabba and Brisbane, we go down to Blundstone Arena, and we hand pass it off to North Melbourne. This is a game that they should have had done and dusted by half-time. It was a game that, given the location they were playing in, should have been signed, sealed and delivered. Should have been a game that, given the fact that they had dismantled Richmond the week prior quite compellingly, that they had shown enough, at least to myself, that they could dismantle West Coast on the road. And yet West Coast rock up in a contest where their backs are against the wall at half-time. Their backs are still against the wall at three-quarter time. With a certain amount of time to go left in the last quarter, their backs were against the wall. And they come home and walk away with a 5-point victory on the back of Captain Oscar Allen kicking 5 goals. It was the best performance I have seen Oscar Allen put in since returning to the team. It was such a compelling team fight back in that second half from West Coast, versing a team against North Melbourne, which I really felt have started to click. They've shown a lot of competitive spirit over the last few months. I don't know what just broke down for North Melbourne. I don't know whether it was just miscommunication. I don't know whether it was still defensively they're suffering with stocks a little bit. I don't know, but it all currently just started going downhill, and I was just left in complete shock and dismay, really, because I honestly thought, given the scoreline at halftime, North Melbourne, yep, not a problem, let's just go out and continue what we're doing, and we'll continue to blow West Coast out of the water. And to West Coast credit, they flipped that switch, and It's something we've seen synonymous with them playing at Optus. Not something we're used to seeing with them on the road yet, but they did it so emphatically in this game. So, as a neutral, exciting to watch that fight back, but very, very much a position where you're left questioning how North Melbourne let this game slip. Only injury concern out of this game, and it's still an injury concern I feel that's carrying into this week, so it's definitely a must watch. Harry Sheezel with an ankle injury. I don't know whether it's going to cost him a game or two. Speculation currently is that he is fine to play. There is rumour as well around the fact that Tristan Cherry might miss because there was something to do with a lower back injury or a leg injury in the third term that he got checked out, but everything seems to be okay there. So apart from that, no other injuries, and Sheezel managed to play the game out anyway because substitution was made. Zane Dersma replaced Robert Hansen in the third quarter, with Gaff replacing Clay Hall in the third quarter as well. Only 6,600 down at Blundstone, but I don't think Blundstone is a max capacity arena, given the fact that these are two teams from two different sides of Australia heading down to Tassie. You never expect a big turnout, so I reckon just shy of 7,000 is pretty decent given the location and the teams that we're playing. Still raises concern to me though about the numbers that we're going to be seeing when Tasmania joins, but that'll be a discussion point for when Tasmania joins, I suppose. Best on ground for this game, again, probably contentious in the way of what we're going to be discussing, and there are a few players here that I really want to talk about in the way of not getting as much recognition, I feel, as they should be getting when it comes to certain conversations. For the best 22 under 22, if Colby McKercher does not make that team, then whoever selects it has problems. 37 disposals at 89%, 5 marks, had the 1 clearance, 6 score involvements and a tackle. Now, a lot of people are trying to argue that he took a lot of kick-ins, that he had a lot of like backwards kind of movement ball where he'd get 1-2 handballs and stuff like that. It's the same conversation point that people were having with Harry Sheezel, and yeah, okay, I can agree that to some extent that the ball being used in that manner in the defensive half is a little bit cheap for lack of a better word, but he still racks them up, he's still effective with it, and when he does use the ball, he uses it incredibly well given whatever circumstance he's put in. So I definitely feel he's not getting spoken about as much as he should be, and this is a person that has been overshadowed by the fact that the conversation point this year that has been pushed is North Melbourne fumbled their win against West Coast last year, which cost them effectively being able to choose Harley Reid. I definitely feel Colby McKercher, this is going to be a hot fucking take here, Colby McKercher, to me, has shown more since returning to the side in the second half of this season for North Melbourne than what Harley Reid has. And I rate Colby McKercher higher because he is not a petulant child and he doesn't throw hissy fits and act like a fucking child on the field. There, I said it, and I know it's going to cause people to crack the shits. I don't care. When it comes to the votes, I threw a 1 vote at Harry Sheezel. 31 disposals at 56%. Again, down on percentage for him, but he still racked up a lot of the footy. 11 of those were contested. He had 401 metres gained, 4 clearances, 2 marks, 2 goals, 1, 10 score involvements, and 7 tackles. The 2 vote I gave to Oscar Allen. Now, 5 goals in a winning performance, you would probably think I've stiffed him a little bit here, but we'll get to that in a second. This is where some of my votes become a little bit contentious. But Oscar Allen had 14 disposals at 64%. 8 of those were contested, 169 metres gained, 5 marks, 5 goals, 2, 10 score involvements, and 1 tackle. Now, best on ground for me, and this is a man who I feel should be the All-Australian ruckman this year, I gave it to Tristan Cherry. 30 disposals at 80% disposal efficiency. 23 of those were contested, 307 metres gained, 33 hitouts, 13 clearances, 6 marks, 9 score involvements, and 12 tackles. A ruckman getting 30 disposals at 80%, 13 clearances of his own, 9 score involvements without hitting the scoreboard on his own, and 12 tackles. He is a fucking machine, and if he gets beaten for All Australian Ruckman this year by anybody, there should be riots on the fucking streets, I'm telling you now, because I feel he deserves it above any other Ruckman this year. Feel free to drag me in the comments about it, and I know it's going to happen when I do select my team, because he will be my All Australian Ruckman for 2024. So prepare yourselves for that. Now let's pick up that heartache that was harboured by North Melbourne down in Tasmania, down at Blundstone Arena. Let's take it with us over to Perth, and let's make sure we pass it off to Fremantle, who hosted Geelong, because this was a game again that I really felt after a hot start from Geelong, Fremantle managed to wrestle it back, and I thought Fremantle were going to get the jump, and Geelong just kept running away with it. They ended up winning by 11 points. Very close contest, and I feel this was a game that very much so would have had a different outcome if it wasn't for certain players missing for Fremantle. And I hate to use that as an excuse, but no Josh Tracy in the team, who has been their prolific goal scorer all season. Sean Darcy was a late replacement with Matt Taberner, and Matt Taberner is nowhere near the player that either Josh Tracy or Sean Darcy are. You could probably argue as well Gary Rowan being replaced late by O'Shane Mullen is just as big, because Gary Rowan is an absolute spearhead for Geelong. But it's very interesting to note that Sarong was sent forward to play a unfamiliar role of sorts, given the fact that we are so used to seeing Sarong play an inside mid role. And he actually finished the game with the most amount of goals kicked by any player. He kicked 3. Next best was 2, kicked by Sean Manor and Shannon Neal for Geelong. So when Sarong kicks more goals than Jeremy Cameron, Ollie Dempsey and Oliver Henry combined, when they're all prolific goal scorers for Geelong in that forward 50, yeah, you'd think Fremantle would get over the line with a performance like that, but unfortunately not. 50,000 at Optus Stadium for this game is pretty huge, but again, you'd expect most of that to be Fremantle, especially given that they're still fighting for a top 4 finish. Losing this game means that they are now very much at risk of dropping out of the top 8 completely if things don't go their way over the next 2 weeks, and I think that would be incredibly upsetting for them, given the year that they've had, and I definitely feel they are deserving of playing finals this year, and they have definitely been, at least in my eyes, worthy of being a finishing top 4 side. I definitely argue the case for that. No injuries out of this game for Fremantle. There was a concussion issue with Tanner Bruin, who was subbed out during the third quarter for O'Shane Mullen. Again, O'Shane coming in to replace Gary Rowan. Pre-game, late change. Does this now shift conversation point to the fact that Geelong are now back within premiership talk, or do we think that their season has been a little bit too wayward to get their hands on another flag? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they can do it without Tom Hawkins. Tom Hawkins is obviously trying to fight back to get back into this lineup, but now you've got people questioning whether he should come back in, because Geelong have actually been performing well without him. So the announcement of him retiring could very well, I wouldn't say be a blessing in disguise, but it's not going to hamper them as much as people may have thought, because they've got respectable replacements in line. I think Shannon Neal is going to be some sort of a player for Geelong. I really do. Looking at the numbers for this game, there were definitely a fair few that you could have thrown a blanket over to select here, and there's going to be some that miss, and people are going to be incredibly ropeable with some of the decisions I'm going to make here. I think the 2 glaring omissions for Fremantle is going to be Luke Ryan and Jeremy Sharp. I mean, Luke Ryan has 36 disposals, which is 8 more than any player on the ground. He has 951 metres gained. Am I making the right decision here, or should I swap it back? I'm going to make an intuitive call. Yeah, I'm going to swap it. Look, I had Jordan Clark in the 1 vote slot here. 28 disposals at 96%, 486 metres gained, 10 marks, 1 goal, 6 score involvements and 4 tackles. But Luke Ryan, Yeah, I'd be an idiot if I was leaving him out. So I'm giving Luke Ryan the 1 vote. 36 disposals, 80% disposal efficiency, 951 metres gained, 15 marks, 5 score involvements, and 1 tackle. I might have dodged a bullet there. The 2 vote and the 3 vote I am definitely convinced with. The 2 I'm giving to Caleb Sarong. Again, playing a little bit out of his depth in a different role, but I think he performed it incredibly well. 22 disposals, 81% disposal efficiency. 8 of those were contested for 311 metres gained. 6 clearances, 4 marks, 3 goals, 6 score involvements, and 5 tackles on the day. I think 5 was very close to a game high for tackles. If not, it was just shy of, and I think it was in the top echelon of tackles. There was only a couple of players that had more. So definitely pressure rating was up for Caleb Sarong, as we have come to appreciate really from him. Best on ground for this game, though, I'm throwing it to Patrick Dangerfield. I really feel he definitely played some sort of a game for Geelong, kind of wound back the clock a little bit. 20 disposals. Disposal efficiency, okay, yeah, terrible, 45%, but he had 14 contested, 455 metres gained, 11 clearances, 3 marks, 1 goal, 2, 8 score involvements, and 3 tackles. Feeding his teammates the ball, getting involved when needed, playing a critical role of getting the ball over the line. Now, I could argue that we could have left him out, we could have put other people in place, but I think Patrick Dangerfield was deserving of the 3 votes here. I could have even... I don't know if I could justify giving Caleb Sarong 3 votes in a losing team. So we're giving it to Dangerfield, and I'm gonna get dragged, but I'm leaving myself open to that dragging. Pick up that heartache that is in Perth, and we go down to Marvel, where Essendon hosted the Gold Coast in a game where Gold Coast was yet to win on the road, away from home. And that heartache was dished up by a man named Big Daddy McAndrew after the siren. The script couldn't have been written any better. I was watching the game with my dad, and before Sam Collins even received that rebound ball and kicked the ball into the forward 50 with about 30 odd seconds left, I turned around and made the comment, how good would it be for McAndrew to mark the ball and kick the match winner? Because my brother is an avid Gold Coast fan, and he's always talking up McAndrew, and I refer to McAndrew as his best mate when they're playing. So I turned to Dad and said, I wonder if Corey's best mate's gonna stand up and kick the goal. Sam Collins gets the rebound, kicks it up forward. McAndrew pops up and takes a pack mark, and it was just history from there. McAndrew goes back, ice in the veins, puts it through, and unfortunately, negative conjecture comes about that because he's been the target of racial abuse, some of which I saw firsthand over social media. Others have reported it as well. It is so fucking disgusting that a player's moment that should be heralded and celebrated gets squandered by a handful of individuals that think they're trying to be funny, or their bigotry should supersede anything that's happened. It's fucking ridiculous. But McAndrew picking it up and just absolutely running away with it was, just talk about taking opportunity and just having the ability to go back and kick it. He said after the game when he was interviewed that he remembered Noah Anderson kicking the match winner at Marvel against Richmond a couple of years back. It might have even been just last year. And he said, it'd be cool to have one of those moments, and McAndrew did it, and good fucking on him. 29,000 at Marvel. Substitutions came from the way of Nick Cox being subbed out due to concussion. Now, this is a conversation point that Kane Corns has now brought up on television, mind you. The instance where Cox gets concussed is so mind-boggling. I don't understand it, because he sees impact coming from the side, so he actually dodges, he moves his head out of the way, he kind of shimmies out of the way like that, does a Backstreet Boys NSYNC kind of move. And it doesn't even look like his head hits the ground. When he hits the ground, he cops a knock that is going to be a knock where 9 times out of 10 you're going to cop one of those knocks just in general play. No head knock. and he's concussed. I don't understand it. Kane Cornes is questioning now, because he was concussed by such an innocuous move, whether or not he should be playing football. It's Kane Cornes, let's get real. But yeah, I was a little bit worried about that. I honestly had a little bit of questions about how that injury come about. You can't really blame the player. It's the medical team that makes the call, but I didn't see any knocks that really warranted that kind of thing. You know, some supporters, have been saying maybe it was a knock he copped a couple of weeks ago and he's suffering delayed symptoms. Well, if that's the case, why is he playing at all? You know what I mean? Looking at the teams overall for this game, one of the harder ones to pick for votes, I feel, over the duration of the weekend. It was definitely some players are going to be stiffed here. Nick Martin's definitely going to get stiffed hard, and I think a lot of people are going to hate it, but 36 disposals, which was a game high, 69% disposal efficiency, 722 metres gained. I think that was a game high. 4 clearances, 7 marks, 7 score involvements, and 3 tackles. I still don't feel he was even Essendon's best on, because I feel there were better players for Essendon. Again, it comes down to the quality of the use of your ball, not the quantity of the amount that you gain. A player that I think is also stiff to miss here, I should probably reconsider a vote here. Let me see if I can justify taking Mac Andrew out of the 1 vote slot here, because Mac Andrew just didn't kick the winning goal, but he had a handful of goals on the night completely, and I felt was one of the better performers for Gold Coast forward line, considering we're talking about a player who finishes with 4 goals for the game and has been playing as a tall intercept defender for most of the season. The only player that I feel could probably challenge him for the 1 would be Sam Draper, who I felt played a really good game as well. One of the better games I've seen Draper ever play. And I'm just trying to justify whether I can make that swap. I don't think I'm going to. No, I won't, but I'll give an honourable mention to Sam Draper. He had 11 disposals for 63%, 275 metres gained, 14 hitouts, 5 marks, 3 goals, 2, including a goal of the year contender, 7 score involvements and 5 tackles. But the 1 vote, as I did mention, does go to Big Daddy Mac Andrew. 13 disposals at 69% disposal efficiency, 218 metres gained, 3 clearances, 5 marks, 4 goals straight, including the match winner after the siren, 5 score involvements, and 2 tackles. The 2 vote, and who I felt was Essendon's best on ground, was Zach Merritt. 32 disposals at 68% disposal efficiency, 13 contested for 585 metres gained, 4 clearances, 8 marks rather. Only the one behind, but had 11 score involvements and 5 tackles. 11 score involvements, I believe, was the most score involvements for the game. He had a handful of tackles. His pressure around the contest was great. And again, the clearances he does get just sets up Essendon so incredibly well. The ball is always safe in his hands, despite only 68% disposal efficiency. Let's kind of put that in the back of our minds. But best on ground for me, quite comfortably, was Matt Rowell. Again, similar circumstances to Tom Green of GWS. Matt Rowell has really turned momentum back around on his year, and he's starting to really come out of the gate strong yet again. 32 disposals at 56%. Okay, again, another player that doesn't really run all that well effectively, but still got a monster number of them. Of the 32, 20 were contested, 414 metres gained, 9 clearances, which I think might have been a game high, 4 marks, 7 score involvements, and 7 tackles. Again, I think 7 tackles was very much a game high for tackles, and it very much was. And for clearances, he had 9, which I think was the most clearances for the game as well, which it was. So he was very dominant in a lot of aspects of the game, and I feel we'll walk away with 3 Brownlow votes as well. We packaged that heartbreak from Marvel, and we just go down the road to the MCG where Melbourne was hosting Port Adelaide, and we handed over to Simon Goodwin and his boys, who lost by 2 points in a contest that, as I mentioned earlier in this video, had a Isaac Heaney-like performance from Jason Horne-Francis in the last quarter. If there was a ball to be won, if there was a chip ball to be kind of kicked around to settle things down, if there was a contest for a player to throw themselves at it to win that ball, whether it be through a free kick or sheer will of willing the ball out, Jason Horne-Francis was absolutely everywhere. And again, this was a game that I felt, even though it was incredibly low scoring. I mean, both teams only kicked 7 goals for the game. I feel Melbourne still had most of the momentum up until that last term when Port Adelaide just turned a switch. And I mean, for the rest of that quarter, Melbourne went on to kick 1 goal 4. Port Adelaide only went on to kick 2 goals 3. But I mean, it's very low scoring, but you can't really. It's hard. I feel hard saying that opportunity was taken more by Port Adelaide when they only did kick 1 more goal. Essentially, it's really hard to have that conversation point in a low scoring game. Speaking of low scoring, they only had 17,000, and still a team that is fighting for finals positioning in a solid Saturday night time slot. No conversation about that, but yet Richmond get fucking dragged. I'm not going to get into it. Todd Marshall was subbed out with concussion. Going to be an interesting watch for the makeup of Port Adelaide's forward line heading into this particular week. Tajmo Woden was a late change for Melbourne, with Jack Billings coming in, as well as Jake Bowie replaced by Blake Howes as well late. This game really asks some questions, and Port Adelaide are now sitting second on the ladder with a double chance and 2 home finals really sitting at the door. So it's now asking questions of Port Adelaide as to whether they can finish second and get that preliminary monkey off their back, because we know they get as far as a prelim and they fumble it. And I have been very hard-nosed on saying this year that a pass mark for Port Adelaide is to make the grand final, given the fact that they've come so close in recent years and fallen short. That might be a bit stiff, but I just personally feel that's where we're at with Port Adelaide. The loss for Melbourne, however, all but puts a strike through their season. And even though in the previous game the Gold Coast had won, that win still puts them a little bit too far out of reach as well. So collectively, out of all the teams that were still vying for spots, Melbourne and the Gold Coast are effectively out of the hunt. Port Adelaide now very much in the conversation for a top 4 finish, and Essendon losing puts them in a position where they could lose a spot in the top 8 entirely, because they're currently sitting out of it. Turning our attention back to the Melbourne-Port Adelaide game, though, handful of players again that really stood tall and are going to miss. Travis Boak, I thought, was very influential on the day, really turning it back. Some of his numbers over recent weeks have been quite impressive. 29 disposals at 86%, 553 metres gained, 3 clearances, 9 marks, 4 score involvements and 3 tackles. Really getting up and about. The captain, Connor Rozee, misses out, but he had 28 at 71%, 536 metres gained, 6 clearances, 4 marks, 5 score involvements, and 5 tackles. For Melbourne, I don't think there was any stiff to miss. I feel the one player that I have gone for probably deserves it. The only other player probably was Max Gawn, and even though I was a bit bullish on him earlier, saying that Tristan Cherry is my pick for the All-Australian ruck position, Max Gawn had 22 disposals at 86%, 15 contested, 330 metres gained, 30 hit-outs, 6 clearances, 5 marks, 3 score involvements and 2 tackles. The demon that I landed on for a vote was Keziah Pickett, because he had 21 disposals, only at 57%, but still had 12 of those contested for 480 metres gained, 2 clearances, 4 marks, 4 goals, 1, 8 score involvements, and 6 tackles. We then turn our attention to 2 Port Adelaide players, the first of which is Zach Butters for the 2 vote. 30 disposals at 66%, 13 contested for 579 metres gained, 5 clearances, 5 marks, 1 goal, 1, 5 score involvements, and 3 tackles. But it was this man who was just everywhere in that final term when they needed him the most. Jason Horne-Francis, 28 disposals at 71% disposal efficiency, 11 contested for 420 metres gained, 2 clearances, 13 marks, 2 goals, 5 score involvements, 3 tackles. The moment was there, and he took that moment by the horns and made sure Port Adelaide got home with that win. I feel if Jason Horne-Francis doesn't have as big as a final term as he did, Port Adelaide don't win that game. Let's take that heartache from Saturday night and leave it at the MCG, but we're going to give it to Carlton, who faced Hawthorn and got absolutely fucking smacked. Now, I tipped Hawthorn to win this game, and that was probably more so out of the fact that I want Carlton to miss the top 8 this year. I apologise to my Blue Bagger supporters. I just have some personal disgruntlement towards some of the fraternity of Carlton supporters. But I didn't think this was going to go the way of 70 plus points. And this is a game where Carlton were decimated by injury, and it's more so compacted with more injuries announced after the game. But I feel this game was dead at halftime, and at halftime they still very much had these players in the mix of playing. They were 30-odd points up, 5 goals clear, and for the rest of the game, after halftime, Carlton only managed to kick themselves 2 goals to. Hawthorn transitioned after that period to kick 8 goals. What is that? 8 goals, 7? They were just so well drilled and so deliberate with their ball use. And I think the best play that summed up the game was there was a ball that was won deep in defensive 50, and they were just able to get a handball chain going to move it from defensive 50 effectively all the way to the goal square of their forward half, where Deer receives the ball from the whiz, Nick Watson, and kicks a goal. And that summed up the effort from Hawthorn versus the lack thereof of Carlton. And there has been a severe drop-off at Carlton since Tom de Koning was injured, and a lot of Carlton supporters at the time said, put a line through us, we're done. They haven't won a game, I think, since Tom de Koning has been out. I think if they have, it was the one against North Melbourne a few weeks back. But big question marks around Carlton now, because Carlton now at a risk of missing the top 8 finish. They are currently outside of it. Essendon, Carlton and Collingwood respectively sitting 9th, 10th and 11th. Who'd have thought that, given how we were looking only a month or two ago? 84,700 at the MCG. You could hear a pin drop when Carlton supporters they were so dead. 84,700 at the game, which saw Carlton supporters leaving in droves, commentary teams making jokes about them leaving, Hawthorn fans up and about. Hawthorn might very well be the team that if they make finals, I'm going to ride the coattails of, because I'm really rooting for the underdog. My dad has even gone and dropped money on them to win the flag after this performance. So who knows? Who knows? But the injury toll, as I mentioned, post-game, Harry Mackay now set to miss a couple of weeks potentially, but we had Charlie Curnow go down with an ankle injury. He's going to miss the rest of at least the home and away season. Fogarty went down with a collarbone. He's done for the rest of the home and away season. Jack Martin did a hamstring, put a line through him. Adam Sard had a hamstring injury, put a line through him. Jordan Boyd went off with a corky. He probably plays, but the injury started stacking up. They were running out of puff, and Hawthorn just put the foot down and ran away with it. And as I said, there were just way too many instances where Carlton just looked well behind the level that they used to be playing. They looked disinterested. They were out of any source of running ability. It was it was an absolute tail up that demoralized the just the emotion of Carlton on the field. You could just tell it. You could tell that they were fucking dead in the water, and I think the supporters picked up on that quite quickly as well. So effectively, as you would come to expect, 3-2-1 for this game is going all the way of Hawthorn. Stiff to miss, however, for Hawthorn. Probably James Sicily. 30 disposals at 76%, 541 metres gained, 10 marks, 6 score involvements and 1 tackle. Special mention has to go to Matt Kennedy of Carlton, who I thought was probably best on for Carlton. 33 disposals at 75%, 10 contested for 485 metres gained, 6 clearances, 10 marks, 4 score involvements, and 4 tackles. The one vote for this game, I landed on Josh Weddle, who I thought took opportunity where it came, has kicked a goal of the year contender, and as a defender, to come out and kick 3 goals, I think you've got to pay credit where it's due. 18 disposals at 100% efficiency, if you don't mind. 4 of those were contested for 605 metres gained, 6 marks, 3 goals, 6 score involvements, and 1 tackle. He's a unit. If I could pinch a Hawthorn player right now and take them to Richmond, I would happily bring Josh Weddle across. The 2 vote I gave to Massimo D'Ambrosio, who should well be in conversation for All-Australian selection on the wing. If they do decide to choose true wingers, it should be Errol Goulden on one side, Massimo D'Ambrosio on the other, but we know the All-Australian selecting panel does not like to do it that way. He had 31 disposals at 83% disposal efficiency, 438 metres gained, 6 marks, 8 score involvements, and 2 tackles. Hawthorn licking their chops because they got him effectively for nothing from Essendon. I am pissed off as a Richmond supporter because he was in our VFL team. We tried to hide him under the guise of an arm injury during that mid-season draft, hoping that we would get him, and Essendon pinched him from underneath our feet. I would love to see him running around at Richmond on one wing, Hugo Ralphsmith on the other. It'd be beautiful, but unfortunately, we were too fucking stupid. The 3 vote, I think quite compellingly, goes to Dylan Moore, who should get best on ground for the game. 29 disposals at 75% disposal efficiency, 578 metres gained, 1 clearance, 15 marks, 11 score involvements, and 1 tackle. Plucked him everywhere, got involved with setting up all of his teammates, racked up a fair bit of the ball with a decent return on effectiveness. Dylan Moore very well could be in conversation for All-Australian selection as well. The heartache continues, and you know exactly where it's going to land for the next game. Let's go to Marvel Stadium, where Richmond played a home game and back-to-back games at Marvel. Who fucking fixtured this? I don't fucking know, but it went down. I had hopes that we would be able to take it to St Kilda, and at half-time, I still had hope that was the case because we only trailed by 14 points, and then we managed to lose by 45. Oh, well, actually, no, it was more than 45, it was 48. I am a little bit upset about the fact that these final term fade-outs have been way too common occurrence for Richmond, and I've had people try to explain to me that it's to be expected with a team that has so many young players playing. Jacob Bauer came in and played for us in this game. He was the 43rd Richmond player to be played this season, and I don't think there's been as many players played in one individual year since the COVID year where we saw West Coast have to turn to their reserves team for players. I'm happy that that exposure has given opportunity to other players to get game time before their time, because it now gives us a look at the future and shows Adam Uze what he's got at his disposal. But again, to see a competitive effort for a half of football and then to see that fade, I mean, we kicked 5 goals 2 to 7 goals 4 in the first half, and I thought, yep, we're still in it. But for the rest of the game, we go on to kick 2 goals 7, of which those 2 goals were kicked by 3/4 time, and then in the last quarter we only kicked 4 behinds. It was hard. It was hard, and St Kilda managed to rack up a 99 score, which again just goes to continue to be the tale of the tape of one week they can kick a huge winning score, the other week they struggle. But they were just lucky enough to come up against St Kilda we'll see, I'm so fucking muddled, I'm messing it up. St Kilda were probably just fortunate to come up against Richmond because, 1, we apparently don't like to travel to Marvel, and 2, we're just so terrible this year, and it breaks my heart. I really didn't envision we would finish on the bottom of the ladder. I was probably a little bit more optimistic by sitting us in 10th position overall. I'm just hoping this season isn't all for naught, given the retirements, given the loss of players we're going to have through trade and retirement and delistings. I just hope this rebuild that's coming is a rebuild that's going to take us down the right path, and it's going to be up to Blair Hartley, I believe that's his name, who we did get from St Kilda. He He was the man behind drafting Jacob Blight in the mid-season draft, who is going to be an absolute gem for us moving forward. He will be a lock for us. I don't know how he doesn't finish playing the rest of the year with us, and he'll be a lock for round 1 next year and every game moving forward. He is an absolute jet. But it's going to be interesting to see how he tackles this draft, because he did land one of the best draft hauls for St Kilda. In the same draft, they managed to get Nazaya, Wangani Malira, Marcus Windhager, Michito Owens, and I think they landed Mateus Philippou as well. So he's known for hitting the draft rather hard and rather well with picking up great talent. So I'm keen to see what he can do for us. When it comes to the trade table, not so much. So let's see how that plays out. 21,000 at the game. Not a bad turnout given the circumstances of where both of these teams are at. No injuries apart from the fact that Mateus Philippou was a late replacement by Paddy Dow, which I believe saw the Dow brothers play against each other for the first time, Paddy Dow and Thompson Dow. We're just going to dive straight into the 3-2-1 for this game. I don't want to dwell on it too much because it makes me so upset, and I could talk about it all I want, and I think I am going to do a dedicated Richmond video at the end of the season to talk about where things kind of broke down for us this year and what we need to do moving forward. So if that's something you'd like to see me do, let me know. If it is something you would like to see me do for every team, let me know. Hey, could be something we can facilitate. The 3-2-1 for this game, the one vote I threw to Jack Sinclair. I thought he was quite convincingly one of the best on the field. 29 disposals at 93% disposal efficiency, 396 metres gained, 9 marks, 8 score involvements and 2 tackles. Honourable mention I'm throwing to Josh Battle, 28 disposals at 82%, 449 metres gained, 9 marks, 5 score involvements and 2 tackles. He is going to be an absolute gun for Hawthorn. That picking him up and sending him to Hawthorn is going to be huge for them, because he just solidifies that back half for that Hawthorn 6 so incredibly well. The 2 vote I'm giving to Dan Rioli, who actually did win honours for best on ground and received the medal for best on ground in this game. But I can't justify giving Dan Rioli best on for me, given the fact that we lost. But he had 36 disposals, which was a game high, 83% disposal efficiency, 689 metres gained, which was a game high, 2 clearances, 10 marks, 6 score involvements and 3 tackles. If we are going to lose him to the Gold Coast, I hope we get a premium for him. I would rather we keep him and possibly see him named as our next captain. Fingers crossed. But I think given the state we are at, we probably need to cash in on players that we need to cash in on, and he could be one of those that we cash in on. Best on ground, and I spoke about it earlier in this video about the redevelopment of what it means to be a ruckman. Rowan Marshall, best on for me. 23 disposals, 56% disposal efficiency, 480 metres gained, 25 hitouts, 3 clearances, 11 marks, 3 goals straight, 8 score involvements. You could probably argue Dan Rioli has a case for best on, but I feel Rowan Marshall not only had a great game of his own, but really negated Toby Nankervis's influence, and that is something that not many ruckmen have been able to do this year. Even though Richmond have lost, Toby Nankervis more often than not wins that ruck battle. But the last couple of weeks up against Tristan Cherry, which was a hard-fought contest, he was convincingly defeated by Rowan Marshall this week. And the final game of the round sees us pick up that heartache that Richmond have been just holding on to pretty much all year. Throw it down to South Australia and caught in the hands of Luke Beveridge and the Bulldogs, who were soundly beaten by the Adelaide Crows. Again, a team that a lot of people had at top 4 to top 6 aspirations for this year, just like myself. And again, putting on a season where they leave it too late to make a charge. I don't understand where the inability to play like this on a weekly basis falls short for Adelaide, because they've got such a talented list and they show that their best is so good, but they deliver it so fucking little. The only injury to come out of this game was Tex Walker with an eye that I believe now requires surgery. So does that force him into making a retirement call early? I don't know. A lot of people think he might have a year or two left in him and he goes elsewhere. I personally feel Adelaide should move forward without him. You've got Riley Thilthorpe, who's looking like a fucking lumberjack. You've got Elliot Himmelberg. You've got Darcy Fogarty. You've got plenty of capable forwards to leave this forward line in the hands of. You don't need Tex Walker anymore. So will he retire? Will he be elsewhere? Either way, I don't think he is at Adelaide in 2025 and beyond. For the Bulldogs, it was just comprehensive beating, and again, it was a game that if they kicked straight, they might have actually been able to wrestle themselves back into the contest. It was probably game over at quarter time. 5 goals 2 against 1 goal 4. But to transition to 4 goals 10, when you could have wrestled back and maybe only been a couple of goals down at half time, maybe momentum would have swung a little bit differently in that second half. But collectively in a half of football, after half time, Adelaide come out and kick 8 goals 3. The Bulldogs only managed to notch up 5 goals 8. So again, inaccuracy costing teams. It happened all weekend. It cost Brisbane. It cost the Bulldogs. 39,000 down at Adelaide Oval. I think that was a decent turnout, and you could hear how emphatic that Adelaide crowd was and just getting up and around their players. Again, I don't know where this leaves their list, but fuck, Adelaide look like a whole different unit when Isaac Rankin is in that midfield. I kind of questioned the length of the contract that they gave him initially when they first brought him over, but he's repaying those dues. He looks so good in that unit. He really does. A handful of Adelaide players are probably going to be stiff to miss this game. I'm not going to go through their stats. I'm just going to name them. Lockie Scholl, Rory Laird, Josh Worrell, Mark Keane, Jake Saligo, Ben Keys, and Isaac Rankin. All stiff. And Ben Keys had another 3-goal, 10-score involvement game. He should have been a smoky for All-Australian this year, I feel, for the forward line. Doesn't get mentioned near enough. Another player that I feel doesn't get mentioned near enough in conversation is Max McElhaney. I feel he should be a lock for the 22 under 22 fullback this year. He's another young talent that I would love to pick up if I had the ability to do so. I just love his physicality and his interceptability when it comes to the ball. No surprise when it comes to the Bulldogs, Adam Treloar is their best performer. Marcus Bontempelli had a decent outing as well. Tom Liberatore also involved, but unfortunately my votes do fall the way 3-2-1 all the way of Adelaide, given how comprehensively this win was. Again, as well, with team selection, I think Caleb Daniel has one foot out the door, given the fact that he was starting sub yet again. I don't know how an All-Australian caliber player can be treated so poorly, and I feel writing could be on the wall for Jack McRae as well. It'll be interesting to see, because I feel there is an exodus coming. Aaron Norton subbed out of this game real early as well. I don't fucking understand, considering it was apparently a tactical sub. I still feel they need to get rid of Luke Beveridge. I don't know. They're in a finals position right now. They could lose it. I don't know. But I feel Caleb Daniel could be playing at Adelaide next year. I've had that gut feeling all season, and I think if he plays as a sub for the next couple of weeks, he's definitely going to walk. Votes for this game, though. Let's get to it. The one vote, Darcy Fogarty. I think the forward line is in incredibly great hands with this man at the helm. And he came out and proved that given opportunity, you can make the best of very little when given opportunity to do so. He has 9 disposals for the game. He runs at 88% disposal efficiency. Out of those 9 disposals, he marked the ball 8 times. He converts 5 goals 1 from his 9. Again, it's about the quality of the use that you have, not the quantity. He plays a role where he's going to be deep forward, and he kicks a bag of 5 from 9 touches. When you can link that to Taylor Walker, who finishes in the top 3 of the Coleman last year, he kicks 1 goal from 8 disposals in this game. He's been a shadow of his former self this year. I don't even know whether Tex Walker has currency to go to any other club. The 2 vote, I wrestled with the 2 and the 3, but the 2 I landed on Jordan Dawson. 27 disposals at 70%, 514 metres gained, 1 clearance, 6 marks, 1 goal, 1 6-score involvements, and 9 tackles. But I gave best on to Matt Crouch 32 disposals at 62%, 18 contested for 399 metres gained, 7 clearances, 3 marks, 9 score involvements and 3 tackles. I just feel Matt Crouch is one of those players that gets a lot of the ball and brings other players into the game, and it allows other people to shine. I feel without Matt Crouch, players like Lachie Scholl, Isaac Rankin, Rory Laird, Jordan Dawson, Jake Saligo, they don't get that outside run gifted to them without a player like Matt Crouch feeding them the ball, and I think Matt Crouch, at least in my eyes, was best on. So after 22 rounds of football, and with 2 rounds in hand, this is how our ladder looks. And not only is the top 8 formation still up for debate, top 4, including the minor premiership slot in number 1, is still up for grabs as well. We have Sydney in first place on 60 points, trailed by Port Adelaide, GWS and Geelong, who finish the round in the top 4 respectively, all 1 win behind Sydney. And that's why I'm saying that top spot's still up for grabs, because these teams are right on their boot heels. We have Brisbane in 5th place on 54 points. We then have Fremantle in 6th place on 50 points. And we then have the Bulldogs and Hawthorn rounding out the top 8. But Carlton in 9th place, all tied on 48 points. Carlton currently out by percentage, which they dropped by the smacking that Hawthorn gave them. Essendon out of the top 8 at the moment in 10th place on 46, only 1 win behind. And Collingwood still in the hunt mathematically in 11th place on 44 points. They need a lot of things to go right. They need to win both their games and have teams above them lose. Still can make it, but I don't think they will. Gold Coast in 12th and Melbourne in 13th on 40 points respectively. Even though the Gold Coast won on the weekend, both of those teams I feel out of the race officially. We then have St Kilda in 14th with our bottom 4 situated as Adelaide, West Coast, North Melbourne and Richmond. With the round officially recapped, there is all but one thing left for us to do before we wrap the video up, and that is turning our attention to the Hip and Shoulder MVP award and how our top 10 is currently situated. And I will preface all of this by saying that Patrick Cripps should have more votes. I think I was a little bit blinded by his start to the year, but this is how we are looking so far with 2 games in hand. On equal 18 votes in 10th place, we have Zach Butters from Port Adelaide and Jordan Dawson from Adelaide. In 9th place, on 19 votes respectively, we have Jack Steele from St Kilda and Matt Rowell from the Gold Coast. In 8th place respectively, with 20 votes each, we have Lachie Whitfield from GWS and Errol Goulden from Sydney. In 7th place, on 21 votes, we have Tom Green from GWS. And in 6th place, on 24 votes, we have Marcus Bontempelli from the Western Bulldogs. In 5th place, on 25 votes, we have Adam Treloar from the Bulldogs. In 4th place, on 26 votes, we have Patrick Cripps from Carlton. In 3rd place, respectively on 29 votes apiece, we have Nick Dacos from Collingwood and Lachie Neale from Brisbane. In 2nd place on 31 votes, we have Caleb Sarong from Fremantle. And in 1st place on 34 votes respectively, we have Zach Merritt from Essendon and Isaac Heaney from Sydney. That is it for today's podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I do thank you guys for taking the time to turn out and support what I do here. This does take a little bit to put together, and I'm trying to find bigger and better ways to improve this platform. And I can assure you, next season, bigger and better things are already planned. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, get on board the community we are piecing together here, and get behind what I'm trying to do. If you've got any recommendations of things I can do to improve, if you want to see certain videos, let me know. Comment section, wide open. Do hit that like button down below as well, because it does let YouTube's algorithm know that you're liking what I'm doing, and it might give me a little bit of a push. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.